Part 2 about how my gym teacher's wife found out that he was having an affair with me. So like I said, his wife was supposed to be gone the whole night because she was at the bar with her friends and they were supposed to get in a hotel. So he invited me over. So we went swimming in his pool, then we did the nasty. Well, a few hours later, him and I were sitting on the couch watching a movie. And his wife kept calling him. But he just kept ignoring it, saying that she was fine and he didn't want to answer the call and ruin our time together. So we go upstairs, lay down to go to sleep. And it's like 4 a.m. at this point. So I shit you not, literally an hour later, I wake up to his wife carefully shaking me to wake me up. She goes, honey, come downstairs. I don't want to wake him up. He has work tomorrow. And I'm like, what the actual fuck? So I went downstairs and she's like, sit at the table with me. So we're sitting at the table and she's like, I hope that we can keep this quiet. She was like, my husband's done this before. And that she can't have any of her friends knowing or anybody at school because she's a PTA mom. So she offered me money to keep my mouth shut. And then she let me go back upstairs and lay with him. What the fuck? Storytime, my gym teacher's wife found out that he was having an affair with me. So a little background information. I was a sophomore in high school, and the one night my friends and I were playing Truth or Dare. Well, a little bit into the game, my friends dared me to download Tinder and message the first 5 guys that I saw. And what do you know, the last guy that I saw on there was my gym teacher. So obviously I messaged him and I was like, hey, OMG, it's blah, blah, blah from your 3rd period class. And obviously I wasn't expecting him to answer, but he did. And he was like, oh, this is weird. How are you? So after that, my friends were like, oh, okay, like it's time to delete it. So I pretended that I did. And when they left, I started messaging him more. So we had been messaging that whole week and one thing led to another. Next thing I knew, he was sneaking me out of my house at 2 a.m. And he was like 32, so he wasn't that old. Well, for the next month, we were going to restaurants that were like an hour away. Almost every weekend, he would rent out a hotel for us. Well, the one night his wife was supposed to be out with some friends. So he invited me over like for part 2. Part 3 about how my coworker cheated on her husband with my boyfriend. So like I said, she DMs him not even like 2 seconds later saying, hey, with a bunch of Y's, and we all know what that means. It's flirty. But she didn't answer him, so she kept spamming him. So fast forward, after him and I were dating for 7 months, we started growing apart. Like we would spend hours without talking to each other. We stopped going out to the point where it was causing huge fights. And then a week later, a rumor starts going around that he and my coworker Jamie slept together. I found this hard to believe because I feel like people were just trying to break us up. But unfortunately, these rumors were true because I did receive some pictures of evidence of it actually happening. So obviously this caused me to get into a fight with them because I confronted them about it. And fast forward, in the end, both of them were fired and they aren't together anymore, which isn't a surprise. And I don't know what's going on with her and her husband, but whenever he found out, he stormed into the hotel and made a huge scene, as anyone probably would. And now they're both banned from even entering the hotel. Storytime about how my boyfriend took me back after I cheated. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade, and my boyfriend Jacob and I had just gotten back together. We'd been together for a year, but we were having some issues, so we broke up for a little bit. Well, only after a week of him and I being back together, I cheated on him. I started texting this guy and I ended up sending nudes to him, and he sent them to my boyfriend, of course. Yeah, I know, that's what I get for cheating. I'm a terrible person, blah, 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 get over it. Well, when my boyfriend confronted me about it, I told him the truth about it and he broke up with me. And I regretted it so much. A month later, I decided to reach out to him. I was like, hey, that was the worst mistake I've ever made and I want to try again. Thankfully for me, he took me back. But the first few months of us being back together were miserable. People were starting rumors that I was cheating on him again. It was literal hell. Moral of the story, if you want to get with somebody else, just break up with your partner. So if you want to get back with them, things are a little bit salvageable. Storytime about how my best friend punched me in the face just to impress a group of boys. A little background information. My best friend did not have a lot of experience with boys. Once she did start talking to boys, this girl did a personality switch as soon as a boy walked into a room. She would usually just act a little bit more of like a pick-me, but never like make fun of me in front of the boys. Well, the one night we went to this party. Her and I liked the same guy, which is always a recipe for disaster. But to make sure that there were no issues, we both decided that whoever he liked would get him. Majority of the night, he ends up talking to me. And I didn't really think that there was a problem because she seemed like she was fine with it. Until a little bit later, I hear her screaming, I want to fight someone. She's like, Brad, do you know that she can't fight? He's like, oh, you can't fight? And he goes, I think you two should fight right now. So then I'm like, I'm not doing this. And she goes, no, I think Brad's right. I think we should fight. So then I'm like, okay, well, you can have fun fighting somebody else because I'm leaving. She runs outside, grabs me by my hair, and punches me in the face. and just literally actually just beats the shit out of me. I did end up pressing charges on her, but moral of the story, don't be best friends with girls who don't know how to act around men. Story time about how I got catfished by my ex-boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 16 years old and I was in 10th grade. And I had been dating this guy who we're going to call Jack since my freshman year in high school. Now the first year of our relationship was absolutely amazing, no complaints. But then fast forward, we get into 10th grade and all of a sudden he changes. Now Jake had always been a super nice person, but for some reason this year he decided that he wanted to be extra friendly to people, mainly girls. I didn't really think anything of it at the time because he told me he wanted to change up his characteristics, whatever the fuck that means. But the one day I'm in the library and then my friend Chloe walks in and she shows me a video of him rubbing some girl's thigh. And then when I confronted him about it, he was like, babe, she was forcing me to. I promise it'll never happen again. Well, I believed him. But because of this, I started paying way more attention to his actions. I realized he started going out way more and he would always have his location off. And when I confront him about it, he absolutely flips out on me, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got catfished by my ex-boyfriend. So like I said, after I confront him about this, he decides that he's going to flip out on me, victimize himself, of course. So him and I end up breaking up, and then 5 months later, I meet this really cute guy on Snapchat. And you know, him and I are talking for a while, and of course I start to catch feelings. And then bam, him and I start dating. Now, I'm not even going to beat around the bush with this one. I was willing to date anybody because I was lonely. The next day whenever I go to school, Jake keeps smiling at me and tries to talk to me, but I'm ignoring him because what the fuck? Well, over the next 2 days, my new boyfriend starts acting like a total jerk. He starts asking me for nudes 24/7. He never wanted to talk to me. Well, the one day him and I were having a really good day and I decided to send them to him. And then a week later, Jack walks up to me and shows me my pictures. And he's like, if you don't do the nasty with me, I'm posting these everywhere. Now, my parents are super strict and I didn't want them seeing it, so I did it with him. And he ended up posting them everywhere and then telling everybody that we did the nasty. Story time. Is blood really thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So a little background information. I was 16 years old and I was in 10th grade. And I had just started dating this guy that my friends introduced me to. He was extremely attractive, really smart, and really kind. Literally had all the traits a girl could want in a boyfriend. So him and I are talking for a while and then we start dating and we were amazing together. And my sister had just came back home from teaching in Thailand. Surprisingly, her and I got super close because we always used to fight with each other. And now we were inseparable. The only issue was she was 25 years old acting like a child. She always wanted to be at my boyfriend's house with him and his family. Weird, I know. Anyway, so she was always over there with them and I thought that maybe she was just lonely. Wrong, of course. Now, of course, like any other relationship, mine wasn't perfect, but my boyfriend and I started having more problems than usual when my sister showed up. He was being super weird and all the signs pointed to him cheating on me, like for part 2. Story time about how I found out that my coworker was cheating on her husband with my boyfriend. So a little background information. From 2022 to 2023, I worked as a receptionist at this hotel, and I was pretty good friends with one of my coworkers who was kind of older than me. I was 19, and at the time she was about 28 years old, and we're gonna call her Jamie. Jamie seemed like a very professional woman. Like, she would hardly get into drama, and everybody loved her at work. And we were all super thankful to have her because she was also a really good worker. Now, Jamie was married and she had a son who was about 3 years old. And she would always brag about how her husband treated her so well, which was weird because, girl, if he treated you well, why did you cheat on him? Be so for real. Anyway, so there was this guy who was working in the dining room area and he was extremely fine. Like, when I tell you every girl wanted to get with him, every girl wanted to get with him. But somehow him and I clicked almost instantly. Fast forward a month, him and I start talking to each other. He even introduced me to his family, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my coworker cheated on her husband with my boyfriend. Anyways, like I said, we started talking and he introduced me to his friends, his family, and we would hang out constantly. And things got pretty serious. Eventually, we only were exclusively talking to each other. Fast forward about 3 months later, the news got around about him and I vividly remember that some of the girls were annoyed that him and I were together, which is understandable because he was hot AF. But the person who was most mad was Jamie, and it was very obvious. She constantly made comments towards me about us. She would be like, oh, you two shouldn't be hanging around each other, you guys aren't gonna look professional, all the girls are gonna spread rumors. Like, girl, bye, you're 28 years old with a kid and a husband, get a fucking life. And then whenever him and I would sit together at lunch, she would look at us with these nasty looks. Well, fast forward, the one night him and I are hanging out, and then eventually she follows him on all social medias. But I didn't care though because I thought he was loyal. After my boyfriend accepts it, not even 3 seconds later, she DMs him saying, hey, with a bunch of Ys, like for part 3. Part 2 about how my boyfriend literally proposed to another girl right in front of me. So like I said, my boyfriend had a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of town. And that night we were supposed to be on a plane to the Bahamas with our friends. So while he was getting ready for this meeting, I went and I dropped the kids off early, and he went to this meeting, and I drove our luggage over to our friend's house because they were just going to drive us to the airport. So my girlfriend and I are super pumped to go on this trip. So we decided to start drinking early, and we went somewhere to get drinks. She suggests this high-end place because the guy at the bar has a crush on her and always gives her free drinks. So we're sitting there having a really good time drinking at the bar. So while we're sitting there, we hear a bunch of clapping and cheering coming from outside. So us being drunk and nosy, we go out there to see what's going on. And what are the chances I walk out there and my boyfriend is down on one knee in front of another girl? And I'm not very confrontational whenever I drink, so I told my best friend to just take me back to her house. When we got back, it was around 6 p.m. And my boyfriend tells me that he's just going to meet us at the airport like for part 3. Story time about how I saw my boyfriend propose to another girl in front of me. So a little background information. At the time, my boyfriend and I had been together for around 4 years. We had 2 kids together, and our relationship was pretty rocky. Within the first year of us dating, he would cheat on me all the time, and both times that I was pregnant, he would cheat on me also. Now, after I popped out the second kid, our relationship was going pretty well. And if you're wondering why I didn't leave him when he was cheating on me all the time, well, it was mainly because I grew up in a broken home. And remembering how hard it was on me whenever my parents broke up, I didn't want that for them. Well, over the past few months, my boyfriend had been traveling all over the country with his dad, going to meetings and stuff because he was getting ready to take over half the company. Well, fast forward, it's a Thursday, and my boyfriend has a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of state, and later that night we were supposed to get on a flight with our friends to go to the Bahamas. Like for part 2. Story time about how my best friend kissed the guy that I liked right in front of me. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade. And we're gonna call my best friend Sophia. We were in a friend group of 3. And the other person in our friend group, his name was Josh. And that just happened to be the boy that I really liked. And Sophia knew how much I liked him. Like, I would tell her all the time how excited I was, that we were hanging out. And she would be like, oh my god, I'm so happy for you. Like, you guys would be so cute. Just a bunch of fake shit. So the one day we're all sitting in our free period, super bored, and our friend Dylan says, hey, why don't we play spin the bottle? With a water bottle, of course. So it was us 4 and a few other kids from our class. Well, Sophia decided to spin the bottle first. And of course, who does it land on? Josh. And I'm sitting back like I have nothing to worry about. My best friend wouldn't do that to me. Well, of course, I was wrong. I thought she was going to apologize, but after she gave me a very smirky smile, well, they started hanging out more and I felt extremely left out, so I just decided to forgive her. Part 3, is blood thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So like I said, I forgave my sister, and then I got a new guy, he was amazing, and then my sister started begging to hang out with us. Now, of course, you would have thought that I learned from the first time, but I did not. I just completely ignored the signs that God gave me that she was a bad person. Okay, I guess not a bad person, she just didn't give a fuck about my feelings. Well, the one weekend his parents went away and they needed him to house sit, so he invited me over to house sit with him, and then guess who tags along? My sister. I mean, I guess I could have told her that she couldn't come, but at the same time, I was trying to be a forgiving person, okay? And I thought that she wouldn't do this shit to me again. Well, I was wrong because on the last night of house sitting, we all decided that we were gonna get drunk. And my sister made sure that I got more effed up than everybody else. I ended up actually getting alcohol poisoning and I almost died. But she didn't care. She was too focused on sleeping with the new guy. The worst part of this is they started dating and my mom was on her side. It's been 3 years and I'm still trying to forgive her and my story time about the worst day of my life. So a little background information. I was 16 at the time, and I was either in 8th grade or 9th grade, but I really don't remember. And I had this boyfriend who we're going to call Cameron. We had been dating for 3 years, but before him and I got together, we were best friends. Well, I also was in a friend group with myself, Amber, and this girl named Sky. Now, I wouldn't really call Sky a pick-me girl. She was more of a jealous best friend. For example, the one day we went shopping for dresses, and I picked this one out that I really liked and that looked super good on me. Amber was like, OMG, you look so beautiful. And then Sky, she was like, that dress is ugly and it makes you look fat. Well, after that, I told her I didn't care what she said and that I was going to get the dress anyways. Well, she didn't like the fact that I wasn't going to listen to her, so she didn't talk to me for 2 whole weeks. And then after, she texted me saying that she forgives me, even though I didn't apologize, but okay. Well then, me being stupid, I introduced her to my boyfriend. Bad idea, like for part 2. Part 2 about the worst day of my life. So like I said, me being stupid, I introduced her to my boyfriend. Well, after that, Cameron started acting really weird. Like him and I, we would literally hang out with each other 24/7. And now he was always too busy for me and we would only talk at school. And because I was in all the smart classes and stuff, I would go over to his house to tutor him. Because, I was like the one who was winning every single fucking award for being smart. Well, I came over on the day that I would usually tutor him. And when I went over there, his mom was like, oh, he's busy. He's out with his friends. So then I went home and I got bored and I opened Instagram. Well, I see that he's at a party with Sky and they didn't even invite me. So I asked him about it, and he said, oh, it was her and her boyfriend's party. So I was like, that wasn't really an excuse for why you didn't invite me. So he apologized and I forgave him. Well, 5 weeks later, I found out that him and her did the nasty, and she got pregnant. And then there was a rumor going around that they made out in the bathroom. So I blocked both of them and never saw them again.